So another pretty solid episode from the Orville this week. As always, I'm Al, this is the Geek in Review. I'm going to be talking about the Orville New Horizons Season 3 Episode 7, so, whatever. And yeah, we're getting a lot of Kaylon backstory this week. I've said in previous reviews, I think the Orville is relying too much on previous episodes' backstories. This one is definitely not. It is giving us a lot of history in the Kalon and the Revolt. And there's quite a lot packed into this episode as well. Not just the Kalon's history, but maybe even their potential future. There's a lot going on with the crew. Pretty much everyone's in this. Some characters get a lot more focus than others. But yeah, I really like this one. In the last 3 episodes or 4 episodes of this show, I've just really been another next level and I've really enjoyed them. And as always, there's some deep questions in this episode too that they don't shy away from. And another theme of this season is a bit of a lack of comedy, and yeah, again, I understand why in this episode it wouldn't really fit in. But anyway, let's get to it. So, as I said, we're getting some Kaylon again, and yeah, I wasn't really sure how this was going to fit in. And at the start, I'll be honest, I thought it's either a Kaylon in that box or it's Kelly, because every away mission she goes on, she gets in trouble. She's sort of like the Chief O'Brien of the Orville, where she has to get tortured or left behind when she goes on an away mission. And as I said, a lot of the other characters in the show get a bit of development here, namely Lamar and Kiali. Their love lives progressing in, let's just say, an interesting fashion. And although this episode isn't referencing previous episodes' plots, there is nods to things that have been mentioned about lovemaking with Slayans before and how it might be a little bit intimidating and a little bit dangerous. So I was like how they sort of brought this to the foreground, and I like how they're sort of developing the dynamic on board the ship as well, because we haven't really had a life aboard ship episode this season so far. And those aren't the only two getting it on. Claire and Isaac, the on again, off again, but he doesn't have an off switch, are back on. I thought that was quite a good joke. Leave a like and subscribe to the channel. But yeah, so she's back on with him and they're going to, their version of the holodeck. But she's making him look human. So yeah, when you think about it, how fucked up is that? She's denying him his true self and creating her own fantasy. Or it's the actor that plays Isaac just wants to get out from behind the mask, because that's 2 episodes back to back, so this guy is not being Mandalorian this season. I wonder if they're going to keep that as a trend up, as finding an excuse to bring the actor in. That's not a complaint, I don't mind it. This episode, it works perfectly well and it services it, because this is a really deep dive into the Kalon and, let us say, their history and their future as well, maybe. And one of the other storylines, it's kind of starts off thinking it's the A storyline, is the crew has to meet a matriarchal society. So it means that Kelly and Kiali and everyone, or basically every female, gets a promotion by a rank or 2. So Kelly's now the captain, Kiali's the number 1, you get the idea, whereas the guys are reduced in rank, because if males are seen to be in power, these aliens aren't going to be particularly happy about it. So they are deceiving them, kind of, for good reason, but of course it doesn't all work out in the end. And there was some comedy in here. I love Bortus's reaction to them about why are we dealing with such a backward species when Motlins are exactly the same, just from a male perspective. They don't lean into the comedy with it as much as they could. There's a bit more physical comedy with the guys and stuff, but yeah, I would have liked to have seen a little bit more use of Bortus in this, but sadly not. And it's definitely not that Next Generation Riker episode where he goes to the Matriarchal Society. And one other thing, it's just a personal gripe, I don't like Kiali in blue, she just suits red better, but hey man, that's just me. But yeah, we've got this sort of flash at the start of this alien family with the Kalon, and then these matriarchal aliens are a different species. I was wondering where this was going. And then we find out that the planet that they're orbiting, there's a sort of hidden base. They go down there, there's a scientist and there's a Kalon, but this guy can experience emotions. He was basically damaged after a battle and they repaired them. And yeah, this is a really lot of depth for the Kalon here, because this Kalon called Timus feels guilt. And he completely agrees with Isaac's point of view. Because he can experience emotion, he's a lot more dimensional than Isaac is. They have a conversation about regret, and it's brought up a few times with Isaac in this episode. But yeah, the fact that this guy experiences emotions and he thinks that the rest of his race are wrong, is it a bit of a Hugh Borg thing? Sort of, but they don't play into it too much. But yeah, we've got these two sort of love storylines with the different members of the crew. We've got the alien negotiations, and then we've got this Kaylon that's now developed emotions and feels guilt and things. So there's a lot going on in here in this episode. And the fact that one of the love stories is about Isaac and Claire, she wants him to be more human, and now he can be, well, not more human, but he can understand things and see things from her perspective, and of course understand her emotionally. And seeing the two Kaylon, Isaac and Timmins together was great, how they had the different mannerisms, because they're basically faceless creatures, and I really liked that, and it showed how solid the acting and directing was in this episode. But yeah, we find out that all the stuff about the K1 Kaylon and the family, it's flashbacks to before what happened on the Kalon Rebellion in the Kalon homeworld. And I got this pretty much after the first 5 minutes. I wasn't too sure, but we see what happened is the Kalon are a little bit too intelligent, and they start sort of questioning their existence and questioning their masters. The company that created them was aware that this was going to be a problem, and they basically rushed them into production to be first. And yeah, that's happened in the real world with exploding phones and bending phones and all sorts of stuff like that. And there's a message here about corporate greed, guilt and responsibility, because they knew this was going to happen, and they knew the robots were going to become self-aware. Anyway, the other story, or the other story about the ambassadors was great. The whole seen and not heard thing for the guys and the role reversal was pretty good. Until the bit they admit that they lied. And yeah, I said at the start of the video, they did lie and misrepresent themselves to these guys. The resolution with Ed and Kelly was okay. I've been saying I wanted to see more of them all this season, and I do, but this stuff wasn't them at their peak. It could have been played harder into the comedy, which I'm surprised it didn't, if I'm honest. And again, Charlie gets focused. We do get set up to this story because of the Kalon revolt, and yeah, it makes sense to give a bit of resolution here. And the bit of the revolt in the past is harsh, man, with the kids and the family and all that, but this show isn't shying away from being ugly this season, but ugly in a good way, I think. And I don't know if this was necessarily a message about slavery, more about how the power dynamic can be corrupted. And by that, I mean just Google the Stanford prison experiments, because the way that those kids were torturing the Kalon was exactly the same as what happened there. If you've never heard of it, man, seriously look into it, it's pretty interesting stuff. But yeah, as I said, and I keep saying, there was a lot going on with this Kalon backstory, the alien negotiations, the Kalon emotions, all the love stories, Isaac getting emotions. But that's the genius of this show, it all pretty much felt balanced, and not a lot of shows can do that. Every episode up until this has focused on one thing, like Gordon or Topa or the Krill, and I really think that Orville works best with all the characters having something to do. And finally, in this episode, they pretty much all do. Look, everyone plays a part here, and this is exactly what I want to see from the show going forward. This show seems to be finally growing into itself, and this season has asked some big questions. The last few episodes have been more bolder than the rest, to be sure. This episode has classic sci-fi tropes throughout it. Again, they manage it really well, fitting them all in. And Isaac getting emotions was huge. This show has been addressing consequences of previous episodes all season, and I did wonder if they were going to address Claire's attitude at the start of the episode. I get that Claire needs more, but does that mean she's not willing to accept him as he is? And again, big questions I was hoping they'd answer, and they do. They pretty much answer it straight away once he loses his emotions. It doesn't work for him because he's not one of the original Kalons, he's an upgrade, so they can do it and it'll last for maybe a few hours, or they can erase his memory and he'll lose everything he has, but he'll have emotions. So Claire will get what she wants, but she'll lose what she has. And that's what I'm talking about, how well balanced this show is. It brought back Claire's behaviour at the start of the episode, and this show really deals with dilemma as well. Like, I mean, really well. I didn't like how this arc was going, and they pulled me right back in with this and made me like Claire again by having her do the right thing. I was shocked at how selfish she was being at the start of the episode, and where she ended up here is pretty much what I would expect from her character after 3.5 seasons. And I think Isaac is aware enough to know that Charlie's a bitch, and he does sass her a little bit at the end. And they seem to close the sort of Charlie-Isaac arc here, which is good because it was sort of defining her character. And now she can only be defined by the fact that she's dating Seth MacFarlane. But yeah, all in all, another great solid episode of the Orville this season. In fact, I don't think there's been a bad one so far. They paid off some stuff, they've definitely set up some stuff with the Kaylon emotions. I think we're going to get that reference next season. But what did you guys think of this episode? If you've made it this far, please leave a like on the video. As always, you can reach out to me on Twitter at The Geeks Reviews, or you can leave a comment below, and please subscribe to the channel because something like 95% of you that watch these videos aren't subscribed. It's only one small click for you, but it means so much for me and it doesn't cost you a penny. My name's Al, as always, thanks for watching.